Welcome, one and all, once again to another Johnnie Torch Live. Number 20 edition of Johnnie Torch Live. We did the Torch News Roundup yesterday, so I'm not used to doing back-to-back shows like this, but, why not? Let's try it. I didn't get any views for the last video. Maybe this one will be more successful. Gotta have optimism, right? Alright, for our number 20 live broadcast, what could be better than a top 20 countdown? Let's get it on. Let's see what we've got here. The subject I've chosen for today for this list is my top 20 favorite superhero actors. This was a very difficult list to comply, and I have to admit I juggled the positions around an awful lot. There are a few actors that sadly I wasn't sure where to put them on the list, and I could have done like a top 50 list and it would have been great, but you have to, originally it was going to be a top 10 list, but of course, there are just so many great performances now in the pantheon of superhero movies and television. We're doing both superhero movies and television. That just wouldn't have been enough. Doing a top 20 list just barely covers some of the best performances. So, without further ado, let's take a look here into my top 20 favorite superhero performances. I'm going to have the chat open. I will try to keep an eye on it. As I said before, if I get on a roll, usually doing these kind of countdowns or tributes, I usually forget to look at the chat. But I will attempt to keep an eye on it. And if I miss you in the chat, please put something in the comments, because respond to the comments whenever possible. Okay, starting in at number 20, we have Van Williams and Bruce Lee. Ah, yes. I had to put these two on as a pair because some performances are really team efforts, and I don't think it would have been fair to just put Van Williams up without Bruce Lee. I don't think you really could separate Bruce Lee's performance here from. So we're going to stick them together. I don't know if that's going to, you know, be cheating, but that's what we're doing. Van Williams, of course, playing the Green Hornet in the '60s. He just gave a great performance. I've always been wowed by his performance as the Green Hornet. Never saw it as a kid. It was something that I had to discover later because it was only a one-season show. But he did a great job, and he played Britt Reed, the alter ego, very well as well. That's one of the things you have to also consider is, particularly in this day and age, the modern superhero performance, they don't have to play two different roles. They just have to play one. And so I think he did a good job trying to present being the newspaper man and had responsibilities put upon him, as well as being the vigilante and the. Well, in this case, he was playing also a heavy. He was playing a villain because the Green Hornet was thought to be a criminal in the in the concept, a criminal in order to get the criminal element on his side so he can exploit them to bring about their downfall. Pardon the interruption for a second there. Okay. Also wanted to make sure I mention, I don't know how long this video is going to go. Usually when I have a lot of subjects here, like the top 20 this is here, this could be a long one. I don't know. But hopefully you'll stay tuned for the entire program. So, okay, number 20, we have Van Williams and Bruce Lee. And like I said before, I hope this isn't going to be too reminiscent of my top 10 favorite superhero shows, because there is going to be some variety here, but I think you're going to see some of the same faces and names pop up. Let's see, for number 19, we have Duncan Rhaegar, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I've never heard it pronounced. Duncan Rhaegar as Zorro from the New World series Zorro. He brought a real exuberance to the role is probably the best word I could describe for his performance here. Just a lot of exuberance, which is what you want in Zorro. Again, this is not to take away anything from Guy Williams. I would love to have put Guy Williams on the list too. There just isn't enough room. Um, I probably should have led with this, but a couple of the notable. I really tried to put Michael Keaton's Batman in this list. Regretfully, I didn't really know where to put it. Wanted to put James McAvoy's Professor X. Again, there's not enough room for everybody in the top 20. And I sincerely wanted to put the Black Widow as played by Scarlett Johansson. And again, it just they didn't quite make the cut. But I thought that Duncan Rhaegar should have made the cut because once again, this is sort of an underrated performance. I think he really deserves some credit for, you know, putting the character of Zorro on his shoulders and really taking off with it for this whole series. He really did a great job too of playing the classic hero in the classic sense. As I said before, that's one of the reasons why I love the show so much was it felt like the old sort of Silver Age rules still applied. You know, it wasn't about killing and it wasn't about, you know, there was just a lot of the classic tropes of the dilemma the superhero is in. This is another case where, like I said, he had to play Don Diego as well as Zorro, and Don Diego, of course, had to be sort of the top. He couldn't really show himself getting angry in public, and you know, it brought about those challenges that it's great to see an actor play when he has to play both sides of the coin. He has to play the aloof and, you know, preoccupied alter ego, and then of course the great heroic, you know, persona that captivates the populace. So he did a great job, and I thought he was very willing to be put on the list. So number 19, Duncan Rhaegar's Zorro. All right, so next up we have number 18. We're going to go to the movie side of things for this one. Here is a gentleman that I don't really think got as much respect as he should have gotten. Didn't get the credit due him. Marsden as Cyclops, Scott Summers. I always thought he could have done a real bang-up job as Cyclops, which, but in the brief time afforded him, he pretty much played Cyclops the way that he was meant to be played. He nailed it. You can't really say he didn't. The fault of not much screen time as he deserved is not his. Um, the first X-Men, I think probably why that's still one of my all-time favorites is because it is the only one where Marsden's Scott Summers really gets enough time to shine. He's great, and of course, I should get into that when I um, review those movies, the X-Men movies. I'd like to go over the original trilogy and review them. But the only one that really did justice to him was the first movie. Of course, the second movie, he was kicked to the curb, mostly in favor of Storm. We'll get into that another time. And the third film, they pretty much wrote him out, but part of that was in character. Part of it was he was already signed up, James Marsden, to Superman Returns, which kind of made it difficult. But in any case, I thought he gave a great performance. He was pitch perfect as Scott Summers. So my number 18 would be James Marsden as Cyclops. And unfortunately, he didn't get much movies. I hear rumors that maybe they'll try to court him for the Gifted TV show. I would love for that to happen. Just would die to see that happen. But I don't really know if they're going to try to get any of the old cast members on. Of course, a lot of them are probably price range for them, but you know, I would love to see him resume the role as Scott Summers in some capacity. James Marsden. Okay, number 17. Number 17, we have the beautiful and lovely as slash Black Canary. You know, she played both. I personally would have loved to see her continue on as Black Canary and just been our Black Canary for the Arrowverse. but they kind of already promised the role to Katie Cassidy, who, in her own to her own credit, did well in the role. I don't really have anything against her. It seems to be a lot of fans have animosity towards Katie Cassidy's Black Canary. A lot of people have animosity towards Felicity. A lot of people worship Felicity. A lot of people worship Katie Cassidy's Black Canary. To me, this should have been, or I should say, Katie Lotz should have been the Black Canary for the show. They should have just put all their chips on her. She looked great in the costume. She looked great as the character. But let's just, you know, take what has been given us, and she's now the leader of Legends of Tomorrow, so she's done pretty well for herself. I thought she was great, both as Black Canary and as White Canary. I think they kind of lose sight of her now on Legends, a couple of different places. I think they try to play up her being sort of a gung-ho lesbian going after a lot of women. I think they should downplay that some. uh, I also think that probably I wouldn't have seen her as the captain of the Wave Rider, because that kind of makes Rip, irrelevant. And he's arguably the one that knows what he's doing. I mean, obviously that's not saying much, but among them, he knows what he's doing in the time paradox department. So, I'm not sure if they've handled her character completely correctly. But as for Katie's, performance, it just stands out. She just is a great actress. Very physical, of course, can do a lot of these stunts on her own. She does a great job as a stunt person. Um, and again, I'm so glad they found a place for her that she can continue on in this character, because for a long time there, didn't look like it was going to happen. But thankfully, yes. Katie Lotz, number 17 on my countdown. All right, let's see. Next up, we got number 16. And number 16 will be, let's see if we can get it up in the screen share. This modern technology, I tell you, it's going to do me in. All right, where are we? Number 16, we have as the Thing. Oh, Michael Chiklis as the Thing. A lot of people bash the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies. I don't dislike them. I like them, especially the first one. I think was pretty good. It was definitely passable. I think the only problem that the first, well, technically it's not the first one, but let's say the first story Fantastic Four has is Doctor Doom being misplayed. Doom should have been this, you know, presence that really you didn't feel. He was just a sort of pale imitation of like maybe Norman Osborn. But anyway, the one of the main things that was great about the movies was Michael Chiklis as the Thing, as Ben Grimm, Aunt Petunia's blue-eyed nephew. He did a great job, and I think he was visually realized pretty well. This is a picture from the second film, the Rise of the Silver Surfer, and they try to make him look a little more rocky, a little more craggy, which out I think. But yeah, he had a great voice that was not a special effect, and he had also the great presence of Ben Grimm, sort of as the lovable lout. Ben Grimm has always been one of my favorite characters in Marvel, and one of my favorite characters outright. I would say he makes my top 5 favorite uh, comic book characters in general. But I think he was given a great performance here by Michael Chiklis. I think he captured the essence of Ben Grimm. I would have loved to see a third film, at least to round out a trilogy, and then if they were going to move on, let them move on. But unfortunately, we only got 2, and so and then we had Fan Four Stick, and you see how that turned out. But yeah, I would love to see Fantastic Four, in its own right, get back to prominence and relevance like it deserves. But number 16, Michael Chiklis, The Thing. Okay, number 15, we have, of course, this is perfect casting, someone that looks just like the character, didn't really need any anyone to sell him on it. It was Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier, Professor Charles Xavier. Number 15, of course, already had a following and a long successful running television show in Star Trek: The Next Generation as Captain Picard. Uh, and he just was made to order for this part, though. Another franchise that was built, by him. And like I said, the voice, of course, the image of Patrick Stewart is just pitch perfect for Professor Xavier. As I said before, I love McAvoy's Xavier. I think he really deserved to be on this list as well, but you really can't deny. I mean, back when this movie was made and it was in production, I believe in 1999, and we heard that Patrick Stewart was going to be Professor X. There was a joyful chorus. Everyone was applauding it because he was just perfect for this role, and his rapport with Ian McKellen, of course, the two are great friends in real life, really made the relationship between Charles and Eric or Magneto really have the proper resonance. It just it really you know cemented the soul of that franchise, especially. And of course, his death in Last Stand, I didn't have a problem with it. A lot of people did, because of course Charles could, you know, replace his consciousness as he did in the end of that movie. So it really didn't bother me. But that his removal of this from the scene, you could tell how much he was missed in The Last Stand. That's another reason why I like that film, and I don't think a lot of people give that film as much credit. I've attempted to review that several times. I've got a long, but this is another one of those cases where I have a long, long script where I have to pare it down because I try to do reviews that are under 15 minutes because, these live ones, it's okay to go long, and I don't know how long people stick with them, but I really like to dig into The Last Stand because I think that it really did show the importance of the Patrick Stewart Professor X and his place in that world and how important it was. So number 15, Patrick Stewart. All right, number 14 is another one that was difficult to place. Uh, I kind of think maybe I should have had him up a little bit higher, but we have Christian Bale as Batman. I don't know. A lot of people give more credit to the Joker and Heath Ledger's great performance, of course. But to me, you wouldn't have those Nolan movies without Christian Bale. I think he really, really put a stamp on the character. Again, he played Bruce Wayne perfectly. He played him, he played the three sides. Batman and Superman have these three sides where you have the, the alter ego, the costumed alter ego, in this case, the Batman, and you have the public face, which is Bruce Wayne, or in the case of Superman, Clark Kent. And then you have the home Bruce Wayne. You have the Bruce Wayne that interacts with Alfred, that has a plan, that knows what he's doing, that is not the, egotistical fop that he plays when he's doing the public persona. And it's the same way. It's easier to call with Superman because it's typically called the Smallville Clark, where, when the glasses come off and he's at home with his parents, in Kansas, you see the real Clark, but he puts on the public facade of being a klutz, of being, sort of scatterbrained, and I think he deserves a lot of credit, Christian Bale does, for playing that three sides of the character very well, very accurately. And of course, the costume looked very good in it. The voice, a lot of people, especially in retrospect now, have made a lot of fun of. And I admit, I think in The Dark Knight, he probably took it a little bit to the extreme. Noticeable in Batman Begins. I don't think it was quite that noticeable in Rises, but in but my excuse has always been in The Dark Knight, he's being pushed to his limits, Batman, and he is, you know, just going on primal. energy, primal strength. He sounds like a wounded animal because that's basically what he is by the end of that film. Because the fight against crime, let alone the fight against the Joker, has worn him so ragged that he has that voice. And, I think it works. It's effective. And like I said, it might have been a little bit overkill, but so, yep, loved it. Christian Bale's Batman. To me, the perfect modern Batman. Like I said, I like Michael Keaton's a lot. I like um, Val Kilmer's was all right. My problem with Val Kilmer was less his Batman, more his Bruce Wayne. I didn't really buy him as Bruce Wayne because, as we said just a moment ago, three aspects of the character, and I think Val Kilmer, he kind of only had two, at least in my opinion. But let's keep moving on here. That is number 14, Christian Bale as the Batman. All right, I want to make sure we get this guy in on the list because in several movies at this point, worth as the mighty Thor. Now, this is a character that, honest to goodness, I really didn't care about. I really couldn't have cared less about Thor when I heard the movies were coming out and I heard, he's going to be in Avengers and stuff. I said, oh, well, that's great. It's the guy with the hammer and long blonde hair. That's fine. But, and because I was never really a big fan of his in the comics, and that's probably coming down to, the way it was written as sort of a forsooth, and I will get thy revenge and stuff. It kind of was hard for a kid, 8, 10 years old, whatever, to glom onto that kind of comic. But when the movie came out, the first one, I was enraptured. I just loved the story. Was banished from, Asgard by Odin. He learns humility. He had a great character arc. And then, of course, bringing him back in Avengers, the original Avengers, it was great. I mean, I just loved what Chris Hemsworth brought to the character because he brought a great deal of humor, sort of, self-effacing humor that I really didn't expect, and it just works so well with the character. He's a very funny actor. I would probably stop short of calling him a comedian, but he's a great actor that doesn't really get his due, and that's why I wanted to make sure he got a pretty decent slot on this um, countdown because I honestly don't think I could see another actor playing Thor, and that's kind of what you want when you have this kind of a list. You want to be able to say, I don't think I can see anybody else. I don't think I can see anybody else playing this role. I don't think I can see him easily replaced. And quite obviously, he's made an impression. And, I'm honestly looking forward to Thor Ragnarok, hoping that it is going to really give him the home run that he deserves, Chris Hemsworth, because he really hasn't, I think as much as the other actors in the Avengers. All right, we're going to move on to number 12 now. This is a personal favorite of mine. Wouldn't make many other people's lists because it's another one of these obscure shows that we talked about in my top 10 favorites. Yet Marc Valley, Christopher Chance. And as I said, I don't want to repeat myself too much from the top 10 favorite superhero shows, but Marc Valley just played a great Christopher Chance, a great throwback to the action heroes of my youth. The action hero character really's fallen on hard times, in my opinion. That was mostly a product of the 80s, maybe trailing into the early 90s, but it stopped being something that was, I don't know, enjoyable, at least from my perspective, at that point. And I felt that they really brought it back here with Christopher Chance. Now, the problem is, of course, it is supposed to be a superhero show. Technically, it's probably more a comic book show because I guess superhero shows involve superhero powers. And as I said in the previous broadcast with the comic book shows, they took away the gimmick of the masks, the hyper realistic masks that he wore, like Darkman, sort of. And yeah, speaking of Darkman, that was another great character, but didn't quite make the list. But anyhow, yeah. So Christopher Chance, I think he's also helped a lot by the supporting cast. Like I said, Jackie Earle Haley, Chi McBride. They really formed a real, great trinity of characters. But he was the focal point. You got the sense that he was a guy that was afraid of his former boss, like I said, and he would put himself on the line because he wasn't afraid to be killed. He was more afraid of being killed by his boss. And it was sort of like, you know, the danger meant nothing to him. It was a pretty good concept that, like I said before, was later kind of ruined in the second season when they just threw all that stuff out the window. But I love Marc Valley as an actor. I think he's great. He's cool as all get out. Cooler. I'm still pushing for him to play Clay Quartermain in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. If they'll just dial him, I'm sure he's got nothing else to do now. He had a show on, um, what was it, Judy's Law or something stupid like that, but it lasted like one season, and then it got the axe. So I think, you know, you probably can get him, you know, for a song if you call him up. So ABC, make it happen. But yep, love the show, love the character, and you know, this one, I talk about The Flash, but this one really hurt like heck that this show was canceled because it doesn't have the chance to be brought back. I mean, all of the shows, you know, live on in some form or other. Um, take Constantine from Matt Ryan's character Constantine. He's come back in animated form. He's come back with a guest appearance on Arrow, and you know, presumably he might come back again on in one of the Arrowverse shows. But we're never going to see the Marc Valley Christopher Chance again, and that's what hurts like heck for me because I just love his performance of the character and all those characters. Like I said, Jackie Earle Haley. Oh gosh, Arrow, excellent. And then you had, of course, you had to have this sort of the middle of the road between those two, which was Chi McBride's Winston. Just great show, great cast, great characters. All right, so that's number 12. We've got Marc Valley as Christopher Chance. Alrighty, let's see. Here is another one that should have really been even higher on the list. Favorites here. Let's see. We have Melissa Benoist as Supergirl. Oh, yes. Melissa Benoist. Ain't she lovely? To me, she's the quintessential Supergirl because she just plays it so well. First off, I have to say, she's just a fantastic actress. I mean, if you've seen her play any type of emotion, she just plays the heck out of those scenes. My all-time favorite show is probably the one where she turned evil in the first season, and not only could she play both parts of, you know, being the angry and bitter Kara, but she also played, when she came out of that, just heart-wrenching emotions on, you know, when she was afraid that she had hurt someone and the things she said to Alex. She's just a fantastic actress, and she is one of the few actresses I'd say that, you know, will make you cry with her performance because she can get that far down in the soul to find a moment and just play it so naturally. Acting. And, you know, she's obviously one of my favorite actresses of today. I think I would go so far as to say she's my favorite actress as of now. You have Jennifer Lawrence and you have Emma Stone and all those, but for pure acting talent, I say Melissa Benoist is my favorite actress. Um, very with Kara, which is something I like. You know, to me, Supergirl was never this sexy character. I know a lot of people probably want her that way. That's why I didn't like the Laura Vondervoot, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Smallville version, where they tried to make her sexy and kind of the cat's meow. I don't see Kara like that, and also the version where you have the bare midriff and the miniskirt or whatever that is. I never really liked that look for Supergirl because Supergirl is supposed to be sort of the kid sister of the superhero universe. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, she's not supposed to be attractive in her own right and so on, but I don't think I see her as being the attention getter. She's not the attention getter. She's the one that you have to look twice and say, oh, yeah, she's really very pretty. And so she carries herself that way. She doesn't carry herself like a sex symbol or something. She's very natural. And I think that's one of the things Melissa Benoist really encapsulated really well with the character. She's not going for flashy. And as I said, I don't like the black stockings in the costume, but I mean, I think the costume being more traditional and some goes really well with the character because, I think Supergirl is supposed to represent those old-fashioned values the same way Superman does. That's why even the 70s Supergirl, where they had her in the hot pants and the blouse to kind of look like Daisy Duke, that really wasn't her. I think this sort of cheerleader type outfit, that is sort of, you know, that's what speaks to her, you know, like I said, old-fashioned values. That's sort of like where she's coming from. But as I said, yet again, you really can't do wrong with Melissa Benoist. And as much as the show has sort of floundered in the past season, I really look forward to her in Supergirl coming up in a couple of weeks with new episodes. Hopefully, the show will bounce back a little bit. I don't think it's as bad as perhaps everybody sort of says. They just got to get rid of the Alex to focus more on some of those great stories that were in the first season. Because the first half of the first season was understandably lacking, but the second half really got some great stories that were rooted in the actual, you know, maybe not necessarily actual Supergirl tales from DC, but actual tales from DC, period. I mean, they kind of, like For the Man Who Has Everything, and they kind of adapted to her. I don't mind them doing that. Get a story that works and adapt it for her, but just give us some of those stories. Don't keep throwing these soap opera drama stuff at us and expect people to still care. All right, so number 11, Melissa Benoist as Supergirl. Number 10, we're going into the top 10 now. This is CW actor. Now, see, we didn't have too many CW in my favorite shows, but we do have a few in this list. Making number 10, Grant Gustin as the Flash. Now, I just love this kid. I love the way he plays him. It was touch and go, which would, because I felt bad Melissa didn't make the top 10, but then again, now, would I put Grant under the top 10? It's so hard. It was basically a coin toss. But in the same way, the kid can play emotion like nobody else. He's got the acting chops that I rarely see these days. You put him in an emotional role, in an emotional scene, the tears start coming. The guy will make me cry. He just plays the emotions so well, so genuinely. You just feel for the guy. You want to give him a hug. You know what I mean? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, to have a hero that you can empathize with, that, he evokes some kind of emotion in you. And of course, also, he's got the other side of him, which is he's a very fun character, Barry Allen, and he's plays him very fun as well, where he can be jokey, he can be, sly and quick-witted. Uh, just great, a great performance. And of course, he's got a great supporting cast that he really bounces off with well. I mean, Cisco Ramon and um, Caitlin Snow. I was going to say Daniel Panabaker, but I was trying to think of the character's name. But yeah, the actors too. Carlos Valdez. They're great. It's just like a great unit, a great trinity there of characters in that show. And of course, you add in Tom Cavanaugh in whatever incarnation he's going to be in, and it just makes for such a great unit of characters that you just want to see what's going on with them. That's why I said I kind of felt bad it didn't crack my top 10 um, TV shows list, but you can't deny it's a great show. I think part of the problem with the show is that, there's the relationship drama with Iris and stuff that brings it down. There is also some, scientific gobbledygook that doesn't make much sense that also kind of pulls it back maybe a little bit. But going back to the end of last season where he, played his own evil doppelganger, I mean, felt for him that, you know, he's a great actor that can play both sides like that. He can make like this evil character that he was playing have some shade of sympathy, and that's like a mark of a great actor. And he definitely deserves to be in the top 10. Grant Gustin Number 10 on our greatest superhero performances countdown. All right, now that we're in the top 10, who do you think is coming up? What is going to happen here as we round off past the halfway point? All right, let's see. Number 9. Number 9, we have, sorry to say late, and Burt Ward. Again, I'm going to pair these two together because I don't think you can really have one without the other in this case. I think if you had the Batman show with just Adam West, it goes nowhere. And of course, Burt Ward couldn't really, carry a Robin TV show, I don't suppose, but you needed these two together, and together they were magic. They were gold. Sadly, Adam has passed a couple of months ago at this point, and his last performance as Batman has yet to be released, as the animated movie is not out yet. And I've probably said this countless times now in different tributes to Adam West, but the Batman, I'm sure this is the first iteration of Batman I've seen as a child, and it just stuck with you. It just felt real. Later on, you go on and as you get older and say, "Oh, it's satire," and they're winking at the camera. But you know, I mean, metaphorically speaking, not literally, but they're sort of winking at the audience, saying, "Oh, yes, isn't this ridiculous?" But they played it straight. That's what it is. They played it so that the kids in the audience could say, this is for real. The stakes are high. Catwoman's putting him in a frying pan with a magnifying glass over him. And it felt like the stakes were high, and the performances were just great. You had the exuberance of Burt Ward that really carried on. You know, carried the day, carried the scenes through. And of course, you had Adam West as the stoic Batman. You know, not so far up his own. That he was like a stick in the mud like the Batman is in a lot of incarnations today, which is something I hate. I hate when they do that. I hate when they make the sort of bat jerk. Like I said, he's completely, it's close to what Ben Affleck did with Batman, although I think he even made him more sympathetic. But you hate that kind of unapproachable Batman, someone that you don't want to get around. And it's the same thing I think they also did with the animated series a little bit to some extent. They made him a little too aloof and off on his own. But you don't have any of that with the Adam West Batman. He is the role model, the example. And these two together, of course, were gold. And we'll probably never see Batman and Robin like this ever again. I mean, I'm talking about any permutation of Batman and Robin in live action. I mean, the bar is not set so high because beyond Adam West and Burt Ward, you really don't have anything else. I mean, we have the Chris O'Donnell and Messrs. Kilmer and Clooney, but of course, as much as I liked Chris O'Donnell, I don't, they didn't get a chance to really cement a relationship the way these two did as, a partnership, as a unit. All right, so let's move on now. That was number 9, Adam West and Burt Ward, in our top 20 performances of all time on screen, big and little. This is tough to what order you want to put these in, but I am going to go with my number 8 slot. Who do you think? Who do you think? We're going to put Chris Evans as Captain America. Now, first off, I got to say, we talked about Michael Chiklis a little bit earlier. I really loved Chris Evans as the Human Torch. I probably would have put him on here at some point as the Human Torch from that performance because, a lot of people say, but he really did save, that movie. Chiklis was doing a genuine performance, but I mean, I think what really kicked that movie up to another level was probably, Hemsworth. I mean, Evans' performance. All the Chris's that are in the MCU, it's hard to keep them straight. I'm also trying to adjust the fan here if my voice is going in and out of the microphone. So let me just readjust. There we go. I apologize if you can hear the fan. I don't think you can hear it picking it up on the microphone, but it's still very hot here, northeast area. All right, so as I was saying, yeah, great performance by Chris Evans in the Fantastic Four films, the Tim Story films, but his real niche came as Captain America, God's noble soldier, or however Ultron described him, accurately, I suppose. But I think Evans' version of Captain America, it's going to be hard to top. It's going to be hard to top him because you have to remember the the genuineness of him. I, I I always go back to the first Avenger. A lot of people don't give that film the due that it deserves, but to me, the whole point of this character, the whole point of Captain America, is you see the quote unquote skinny Steve scenes at the beginning. That is where Captain America comes from. It comes from the skinny kid that wants to do the right thing. And this is a great example of masculinity on display. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we always hear the buzzwords toxic masculinity, and I don't downplay the fact that toxic masculinity exists. I've had to be around it firsthand, unfortunately, for many years. But masculinity itself is not toxic. It's not a bad thing. And it should be championed. And I think this is one of the few occasions where masculinity is championed. Masculinity is championed. And Evans does a great job of playing this character who's not conflicted. That's one of the things I loved about him in Civil War. He knows what's the right thing to do, and he stands by his principles. He stands by his beliefs. He stands for something. And you can't talk him out of it. You can't negotiate him. You can't negotiate him out of it. He believes what he believes, he knows what he believes to be true, and he stands up for those ideals. And that's what makes him such a great character. But I think Evans really gets that. He encapsulates that and gets down deep into the character and brings that out. And I struggle to see who would pick up after Chris after he puts the shield away for the final time. But he's just a great actor, a great performance in Captain America. And like I said, hopefully he will continue on as Cap for the foreseeable future at least, because he's gone back and forth on this. Evans saying, well, I'll keep doing it as long as the scripts are good, but then again, on the other hand, he's like, well, I've got to put it away eventually, so kind of no time like the present. But hopefully, he'll keep at it because he's still got, I'm sure, plenty of years where he can still fit into that spandex costume. Okay, here we go. That was number 8. All right, we're getting up to number 7 now. We have none other than Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man / Tony Stark. Downey Jr. He's irreplaceable. And Marvel knows it. That's why they're going to try to keep him around as long as possible, thankfully. And the good thing is, because most of his costume is CGI'd on him, they really could keep him around for another 10 years. I mean, he's 50 years old now, so, one would think maybe. Um, but, he looks good. Looks good for his age. And, with, like I said, the smaller workload, it's not like Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and Hugh Jackman who have to get jacked up and, do exercises for, 15 hours a day and, be on this protein diet. As long as RDJ is in reasonably good health and reasonably good shape, he could carry on with this character for another 10 years. And hopefully he does. This is another character, this is another performance where the actor elevates the character. Now, to be totally honest with you, I was never a huge Iron Man fan, and only because I felt the character himself was kind of boring. Alter ego was kind of boring. You got Tony Stark, who's like the rich guy that he doesn't have the pretense like Bruce Wayne does of being a fop, being, like a foolish, egotistical billionaire. He was just sort of like a rich guy, and there was nothing else really done with his character. Of course, they gave him shades of character with the drinking problem, Demon in a Bottle, and all stuff that was good, of course, for the character. But the character himself came across pretty bland, pretty pale, and uninteresting. Robert Downey Jr. came to it and brought something else to the character. And that's kind of why he gets a little bit higher on the list here too, I think, is because he actually served the character more than the character served him. He brought something to him with his own, manic energy, which gave Tony Stark a personality, gave Tony Stark character, made him the lovable jerk, the lovable goof, the lovable, egotist. And, stuff. It's just hard to ever replace him, and that's why he's got to be so high up on this list, because it's almost impossible to see anybody else taking over this character. It's the reason why I think whenever he does choose to hang it up, they're probably going to shelve Iron Man for quite some time. I think they could carry on with Captain America. I think they could carry on with Thor. Not saying that I would like them to be replaced, but they probably could be replaced faster than Robert Downey Jr. because Iron Man is, well, it's funny. Tony Stark is Iron Man. Iron Man is Robert Downey Jr. He imprinted himself on that role so much that I don't think it's going to be easy to replace him, whoever his successor is. But yeah, number 7 on the countdown, the great Robert Downey Jr. in my favorite superhero performances of all time. Alrighty, let's see. We've got number 6 coming up just outside the top 10. Another one that was hard to place. Don't know exactly if I would switch these up, maybe if I did the list again. But number 6, we have lady on the list. We have the lovely Lynda Carter as Wonder Woman. Again, just somebody that just embodied the character so well. Wonder Woman is a sex symbol, and she just got the character so well that the character, the motherly, sort of idealistic superhero that, is there to help and not really be seen as a, you know, action hero as much as to be a ambassador to the world and to show, a different kind of, empathy that other superheroes lacked, particularly in later years, although, at this time as well. And Lynda Carter embodied that perfectly. Now, I've already gone on to talk about Lynda Carter and her portrayal of Wonder Woman several times, so I don't suppose there's much more I could say about it here that I haven't already said in my retrospective or in the top 10 television shows. But yeah, there was just nobody else that reflected the character's look as well as portraying that kind of innocence. Um, Comparing her with like Supergirl, Supergirl is like the little sister, and like I said, and I think Wonder Woman is like the mother superhero. Supergirl's like the little sister, and Wonder Woman's like the mother figure of superheroes. Supposed to be like a beacon of wisdom. I've always said that too about Superman being sort of like the father of superheroes. He's sort of like the wise man that you go to, and he will sort of solve all your problems, and he has that kind of weight on him. And in the same sense, I think Wonder Woman's the same way, where she is like the mother figure of superheroes, where she has the wise answer all the time. She knows what's best, and she does what's best. And even in the Gal Gadot movie that came out, she was also very good in that portraying that. I think, of course, that was an origin, and she was a little more naive. And Lynda Carter's Wonder Woman was a little more naive in the first um, origin film of the series. But it comes down to her wisdom, really, that makes the character, that she doesn't really have to second guess herself as to what's right and wrong. And like I said, she can fight and she can be beautiful and glamorous, but that's not really what the character is all about. It's about that wisdom. It's about that being a leader. And of course, Wonder Woman was just played perfectly by Lynda Carter in the original TV show. And very sad, like I said before, that she never came back to this role in some because I think she really did imprint herself on this character to such a degree that everybody thinks of Lynda Carter when they think of Wonder Woman. And it would have been nice to have her, have some kind of presence as Wonder Woman later on in life, sort of the way Adam West did in, the Batman reappearances that he made in different media. But yeah, number 6, Lynda Carter as Wonder Woman, just perfectly cast. Looks like she came right off the page, and that's always a help. All right, we got our top 5 now. We're down to the top 5. We're gonna wrap this up pretty soon, but we've got a few more to go. It is one of my all-time favorites. Of course, you knew he was gonna be here because it's my all-time favorite show. Oh yes, John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen. As I said before in the other video, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but he really brought something to The Flash where it felt like a real, genuine character. Now, I'm not too familiar with the Flash comics. I had a few of them as a kid. Thing like I think Barry Allen was sort of almost like the DC equivalent of Tony Stark, where he didn't really have the most engaging personality outside the costume. He was sort of like scientist guy, and that was the end of it. But I found his alter ego so much more interesting when played by John Wesley Shipp. He really brought some kind of color to that character. He brought some kind of you've seen this guy's life, and they changed it up a little bit in the pilot where he had a brother named Jay, of course, a takeoff on Jay Garrick, who was killed, and that sort of inspired him to become a superhero, sort of the way they made Barry's mom get killed in the TV show of today. But that colored it a little bit where you saw where he was coming from, his history, and how the psychology of the character, which is something that was like popular to do back then in the 90s when you had Tim Burton's Batman out. Of course, the Flash TV show owed a lot to Tim Burton's Batman. I always, sort of sarcastically say, is Tim Burton's Batman done correctly? But but yeah, I just loved his uh, acting, John Wesley Shipp. I loved the way he got along with the characters. The supporting characters were all great with Amanda Pays and the Will They Won't They with Tina, and like I said, Julio Mendez, a great character created by Alex Desert. Of course, the costume was phenomenal, especially back in the day. That costume is still the best Flash costume. I mean, they've got the Ezra Miller version, the Grant Gustin version. Nothing tops the John Wesley Shipp version. I mean, he looks like a beast, and and just seeing him, it gave a great presence to the Flash. That costume, of course, John Wesley Shipp. You know, I don't think anybody else could have wore it the way he did to emulate through that, um, to articulate through that costume, and he did a great job with that. And I really, really hope he comes back in that costume in the Flash TV show of today because it would really be a thrill. And of course, he's a great actor. I don't think he really gets the credit he deserves. I mean, he played Pollux in one of the episodes, which was sort of the childlike, naive clone of Barry Allen, and it was also very touching. It was very heartfelt, to see him play that character as well. And like I said, he played a flawed human as well. He played Barry Allen not to be perfect and a 100% goody goody. He had his moments of temper and flaring up with pride and whatever. It was just a great performance, and I really enjoyed it all around. John Wesley Shipp makes number 5 favorite superhero performances. All right, we're going to go next to number 4. I think these you're going to know. I think you're going to be able to guess these pretty quickly. The top 4 now. Let's see. Number 4, we have only Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine, Mr. Logan. Oh, what can I say about this guy? This character so wonderfully. I mean, a lot of people, like I said before in one of my videos, were sort of like, well, he's not short, and he doesn't have sort of the feral presence. He's got like leading man good looks, where Wolverine is sort of more just this rugged feral type creature. But he brought the heart and soul to Wolverine. I mean, that's what I was so afraid of because when I was a big fan, and still am, of the animated series of Wolverine. I mean, the animated series of the X-Men from the Fox's show back in the 90s. So when I heard they were going to have an X-Men movie, I was really excited and thrilled, but I was afraid because I was afraid they were going to get wrong was going to be Wolverine. And I said, they're not going to have the heart of Wolverine. They're not going to do the whole Jean Grey thing where, you know, it's like, he's like a, Beauty and the Beast type thing where he's sort of like worshiping her from afar, and, Cyclops is, you know, the third wheel. But although it did kind of get a little bit that way in the sequels, because Cyclops was pretty much kicked to the curb, I just felt that they really captured that once again in the first X-Men movie. They really captured those characters so great, as if they came right out of the cartoon. And I'm pretty sure Bryan Singer has admitted that he watched the cartoon for his, flavor of the X-Men. That's how he drew them in the movie, was to be based on mostly the cartoon versions of themselves. Um, but yeah, he really got the heart of Wolverine, and the sort of, doomed story between him and Jean Grey, I thought was realized pretty well throughout the saga. I still haven't seen Logan. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to see that, but as I said, I'm not really a fan of like graphic violence, and from what I understand, it's going to be pretty heartbreaking to see the final fate of Logan as Hugh Jackman portrays him. I'm sure he's going to be recast at some point, probably not for a while because he left such a big imprint on the character, but I don't see who could replace him. I think he just did a wonderful job. Fantastic actor. He brought a lot to the humanity of Wolverine. A lot of, like I said, a lot of people sort of just see him as the feral animal, but he just got the heart and soul of it right. And I think that's what I'll always prize of Hugh Jackman. Of course, he looked the part very well. I mean, people, like I said, want to bash him or, make note of the fact that he's taller than the character, but physically he's very impressive. He's got the look, especially when they do the hair right, which, as in this picture, I believe this is from X3. This picture, I'm not sure, but that's approximately what I think the hair should look like on Wolverine. They kind of fooled around with it to a point where it got a little ridiculous at a time. Uh, Maybe that's X2. I'm not sure. But anyhow, around the early X-Men films is when his hair looked the best. Then they tried to play with it in the Wolverine sequels and so forth. Uh, but he had the look down pat, and of course he's another great actor that sympathized with Logan. You could feel for him, where he's a tough guy, but there was a lot of emotion coming through in Hugh Jackman's performance, especially in the first movie, like I said, with Jean and Rogue. You could feel a lot of loss, this sort of emptiness. Hugh Jackman brought all that. So he not only had the look, but he had the emotional core of Wolverine. And also he had an X2 when Jean Grey dies. I always love that ending scene. And he sort of underplays it. He doesn't try to take a moment away from James Marsden, who's also on this list, of course. He lets James Marsden, as he should, have the moment where Jean's gone and everyone's suffering. Cyclops should suffer the most, and he allows that to happen without taking anything away from James Marsden. Just a great actor. I wish him the best, but I really hope he comes back to Wolverine someday. I mean, I don't know how they can do it, but maybe it'll be set before Old Man Logan or before Logan the movie, and we'll just see how they could do a story before that happened. All right, so we are down to the top three now. Number three on the list, one of my all-time favorites once again. A lot of people credit Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker slash Spider-Man. Oh yes, Spider-Man. I don't think anybody else has ever nailed this character the way he does. And that's to take nothing away from Tom Holland, who I think did a pretty good job. But Tobey Maguire got that innocence, that that inherent nerdiness, for lack of a better term, that Peter Parker has. I think Stan Lee, though he wants to be as diplomatic as possible, has pretty much admitted already that Tobey Maguire is the real life embodiment of Peter Parker. This is what he was intending when he created the character, when he wrote the character. And it's just a great, you know, where you can see him sort of as an everyman. It became popular later on to bash Tobey Maguire for some reason. I don't know why, because I never liked Andrew Garfield's performance, to be honest with you. He got better in the second movie, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which everybody hates, but I thought his performance in that was decent. And Tom Holland is, better than average. And of course, like I said, Nicholas Hammond I thought was good for his time. He was playing with a limited number of toys in the sandbox at that point. But Tobey Maguire, though, really embodied Peter Parker the way he was supposed to be. You can argue that Spider-Man didn't make the quips as much as he probably should have. I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think that there could have been more quips, but you know, people sort of want to see Spider-Man as a joke a minute laugh factory. That's not really the way the character always was. In the earlier comics, yeah, he quipped, but if you look at the movie, you do have a lot of scenes of Spider-Man quipping. You have with the first movie, hey, let mom and dad talk for a while, he's quipping to the Green Goblin, and then Doctor Octopus, in lines like, um, here's your change, and I have that effect on people, and in the third film, he had a couple of great one-liners with Sandman, I'm the sheriff in these parts. That's all Spider-Man stuff. I mean, that's you know that's what you expect of Spider-Man, and they gave those quips to him. The only thing is I believe there was a lot of times where he didn't he didn't quit because wasn't right for it. Now, Doctor Octopus is going to blow up the city, and Mary Jane's being held prisoner. Is that the time when he's going to make quips? And that's why you have like long stretches of the subway fight and this and that where he's not quipping, or when he's trying to save a boxcar full of kids from drowning or whatever, and save Mary Jane at the same time. He's not going to be quipping like mad during those scenes. And so I think a lot of people sort of put too much emphasis on there wasn't enough quips. I think there was, reasonable amount. I think they could have probably done a little bit more, but it's not something that was overly lacking. But yeah, Tobey Maguire, again, another great actor. Yeah, like I said, a lot of people want to meme Tobey Maguire now, whatever, but the guy had genuine emotion. When he cried for Uncle Ben, you just felt the emotion. I mean, he's a great actor that can really emote and really gets the feeling across, because you know that has to be the pivotal point in Peter Parker's life when Uncle Ben dies. And that's why I said you didn't get that with the Tom Holland version. And with the Andrew Garfield version, uh, you know, Uncle Ben was a sanctimonious old jerk in that one anyway, so you really didn't feel it for him. But in this film, you really feel the connection between Peter and Uncle Ben. You feel that the anchor for Peter, that was what instilled in Peter was Uncle Ben. And I don't think you get that in any other film. And I think that's where you see that Peter's an outgrowth of Uncle Ben and the effect Uncle Ben had on him. And Toby just reflected that just tremendously. And it was a remarkable performance. I wish he would have stayed as Spider-Man for the, other, I think there was supposed to be 6 films they were going to make. Sam Raimi, of course, has a lot to do with this. He's responsible for the greatness of the original trilogy. And yes, I said trilogy. All 3 films are great. I don't care what anybody says about Spider-Man 3. It was still great. Maybe a little bit weaker. And, in some aspects there was some problems, but it was still a great film. Okay, so let's move on here now. But yeah, he really should get his due. Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker slash Spider-Man. Countdown. Okay, so the top 2 are very difficult for me to. I'm going to do the best I can to place them because I love both of them so much for their respective work. In second place, I am going to go with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno as Dr. David Banner and the Incredible Hulk. So let's just get out of the way right now. Like I said before, Bill Bixby is my favorite actor, bar none, my favorite actor of all time. You can go back to Olivier and all those others and whatever. Bill Bixby is the greatest actor that ever lived. As far as I'm concerned, the greatest actor that ever lived. as I've given props to so many actors and actresses before in this, the man could emote. He had so much passion. When he started to cry, you just felt it. He brought a tear to your eye. And he embodied the struggles of David Banner with so much grace and gravitas. And it was almost an otherworldly portrayal because he just embodied that good soul, 100% good and noble, to the expense of himself and his own welfare. He would help others. And, he would continue on his great struggle on his own, but he would help others and they would be better by what he brought into their lives because he would come into a town every week and then help some, struggling person or persons out from whatever difficulty they were having. And he just brought so much humanity to the role of David Banner, and he was just a fantastic actor, just remarkable. As I said, a remarkable actor is someone that could bring all facets of emotion to a character. And like I said, when he cried, you want to cry. When he was happy, you want to be happy with him for the success that he had, or for his failures, you'd cry with him. He just was so easily, he was so easy to latch on to and empathize with or sympathize with. He was just the perfect protagonist. Of course, also you have Lou Ferrigno. Again, I'm gonna have to put these both in the same category here because you really can't have one without the other. I mean, they're both playing the same character in effect, but different sides of that character. You have Lou Ferrigno, who brought tremendous humanity to the Hulk, um, without saying a word, with just emotion and reflections, and he just made the Hulk so likable that it was impossible. As I said, in my case, it was impossible to be afraid of him because he was such a gentle giant. You could tell that he just wanted to be at peace. And that's something that I think the modern Hulk in the MCU movies don't have necessarily. He doesn't have that wanting to be at peace, wanting to be left alone, just wanting to be, living his life independent of, people trying to persecute him. And you got that from Lou Ferrigno without him having to say a line. I mean, he was just so empathetic and you sympathized for the creature. And that's why it was so effective. I mean, it wasn't just Bill Bixby going from town to town and helping people. It was the, once the Hulk did appear, you did feel for the Hulk as much as you felt for David Banner. And of course, like I said, the the stories were basically of its time where it wasn't based heavily on the comic, but you still had that, core of it being a hero. He is a superhero. This is not just, I mean, because the Hulk has always been a different kind of character from the traditional superhero. He doesn't put on a costume. He doesn't go out looking to fight crime, but he is a hero. And I think this film, this series portrayed it more than any of the films, where he is a hero because he comes into people's lives, David Banner slash the Hulk, and he makes such a profound impact on them and always to their better. And that goes down to the great performances of Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. Once again, my favorite show probably. I mean, it's the first show I probably ever seen as a kid. Growing up watching reruns of Batman and the Hulk, this was the TV, the superhero television we had in those days, and it really spoke to me. And it was a more adult show, especially than Batman and Wonder Woman, but it spoke to me in a way when I was a kid that I don't think any other show did at the time. It was heavy enough to make an impact on me, but it wasn't so heavy that it was too much for a child. I think that's the reason why Mr. Rogers famously visited the set of The Incredible Hulk, and I remember that too as a kid, and he, did take the kids through the paces and say, look, don't let it affect you that much. It's not something that's supposed to be too heavy. It's a TV show. And that probably did help many a kid internalize the show and sort of take it more to heart. And I know it has a strong fan base. I've been a part of the Incredible Hulk message board run by Doug Bardsley for many years. I'm just always going to be the biggest fan of Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno, and the Incredible Hulk TV show. And I would love to put him at number one, pair of them. But there is still one more that we are going to put on our list for the top 20 greatest superhero performances of all time. And I bet you're going to be able to guess who it is because someone is noticeably absent. And I'm sure the pick will not surprise you. A lot of people will probably have him as your number one in a superhero TV or movie. Best superhero performance of all time goes to Christopher Reeve as the Man of Steel, Superman. This, of course, is Christopher Reeve's 64th birthday. So happy 64th birthday, Christopher Reeve. No longer with us, unfortunately, but he left us with such a legacy, and I'm sure it felt right to do this list on his birthday because I knew he was going to be number one. And it's just an enduring performance. Everybody goes back to Donner's Superman. Everybody goes back to Christopher Reeve's Superman. Why is that? There's been like noble portrayals of Superman in the past. I mean, we have the Henry Cavill performance, which is more of a dour and moody performance. But you know, George Reeves was a light and happy performance, as was Kirk Allen's. Or was it Alan Kirk's? Anyway, but you know, the thing that set Christopher Reeve apart is just the spectacular acting. What sets him apart, I think, from George Reeves is George Reeves' Superman essentially was playing Clark Kent and Superman in the same way. The only difference is the glasses came off and he, you know, thrust his chest out a little bit more and said, you know, stop being a jerk, you bad guys. That's not to take anything away from George Reeves, of course, but I'm saying in comparison to Christopher Reeve, he created a completely different character in Clark Kent than he did in Clark Kent. He literally hunched his shoulders to lose about 2 inches to show a different, you know, visage of the character. I mean, he became a different human being. He got shorter. It was amazing to see. And his mannerisms. It was so, that's why I can't abide people saying, oh, the glasses, people don't recognize him because of the glasses. No, no. Christopher Reeve made Clark Kent a different character, a different person whatsoever. You could not tell me that you worked with this man every day, Clark Kent, and think he was Superman. Because he was shorter, he had a high-pitched voice, he, you know, bungled around things, he looked like he couldn't tie his shoes if he needed to. He created a character that was so believable and, you know, naive and innocent. I mean, Clark Kent, you know, was just a likable character in his own right. And of course, that's the reason why I would put Christopher Reeve over Bill Bixby and the others in the top 5, is because he did so much in creating a separate character. He didn't really use like a costume to fall back on. He didn't have a different persona, you know, a CGI character or a different actor. He did this all himself. He played 2 completely different characters, but he portrayed them, you know, as the same actor way. And I think that that type of, you know, ingenuity, for lack of a better term, on his part, he just knew how to play this character. He knew how to create these characters. And, you know, he did a great job with Clark Kent, making him a likable and enjoyable character in his own right. Superman, of course, he took the idealistic Superman, as I said, the one that everybody wants to get behind. He's, you know, wise, powerful, you know, has the call to action. He's not going to sit back and not help humanity, unlike other Supermen. He is going to be the call to action. Even in the much maligned Superman 4, it's all because Superman cares. That this, you know, that the Superman 4 plot all hinged on that he cared so much to try to save humanity despite itself. You've got a Superman that really cares and looks out for the people, and that is exactly why that scene is so beautiful at the end. And I love that at the end of every Christopher Reeve Superman movie by over the earth, watching over us and protecting us. And he looks at the camera with a smile because it's like he's saying, on the job. And it's just a great feeling. It's like I said, you get the sense that he's the father figure of all superheroes. I think Kingdom Come. See, I'm not too much into the comics, but I think they kind of use that later on in Kingdom Come, the graphic novel, as that's what he is. He's supposed to be the guy that's looking over everybody and everything and making sure it's all right. And of course, you have the Christ parallels that a lot of people are up in arms about because they act like, oh, I don't want to be reminded of the Christ allegory. But basically, that's what the character is. Jor-El sends him to Earth, God sending Jesus to Earth to save mankind and protect humanity, respectively. And so, you know, he just tapped into that sort of rich tapestry of the character and all it encompasses. And he played, a very, it wasn't all just being stiff and stodgy and being the, all American hero. He had the thing going on with Lois Lane, as the, uh, as a romantic lead, so to I'm saying he played Superman as a romantic lead when that would not be very easy for any other actor. The costume, you know, as it is something that a lot of actors shy away from. Tom Welling, you know, it's not easy to play, again, a masculine character like this. He's so in control. He's masculine. You look up to him and you see that he's got everything under control. And when he finally, in Superman 2, loses control, he doesn't have anything in control anymore because he made that choice, that fateful choice that Jor-El warned him about. That's when you see him lose it and see that he needs to go back to the father. He needs to, you know, make himself right again with where he slipped up. So what I'm trying to say is that Superman doesn't need to be completely flawless and completely perfect to work. But what it has to be is he has to know what he's doing for the right reasons. He gave up his powers for love, and then because love is not a thoroughly wrong pursuit, but it was a selfish pursuit in his case because he gave up his powers and that all the rest of humanity were depending on him. So what I'm trying to say is Christopher Reeve still played Superman in a very human way. He didn't play him as this aloof demigod that, you know, a lot of people try to say, well, the Snyder version brought humanity and Superman should not be brought down to our level, but Reeve still portrayed the humanity that is in the character that nobody else could really do and be believable, and not only believable, but have that gravitas for you to go straight in with it and not give it a second thought. And so when he says truth, justice, and the American way, he believes it. He has conviction. As I said with Captain America, it's that championing masculinity where he has these convictions, he stands behind these convictions, and he's immovable with these convictions. And like I said, that's what makes Superman 2 so great is he has the great conflict about where does his duty end and where does his own personal, interests lie. But again, one of the first things I ever saw as a kid, was drawn to it. I loved Superman before I probably loved anything else. I think I loved Christopher Reeve's Superman before I even loved Star Wars. All the kids in school were talking about Star Wars. I didn't know from Star Wars. Later on, I became a big fan, of course, when I actually saw the movie, and it blew me away like everybody else that sees the movie. Usually, I think 99% of humanity is blown away. But at the time, being a 6-year-old or something, for me, it was all about Superman. I didn't care about anything else. You could talk about Star Wars till you blue in the face. You could talk about whatever else was popular at the time. I don't remember. Superman was enough for me. Christopher Reeve's Superman was enough for me. He was my, first, um, you know, probably the Hulk was my first introduction to superheroes. But I think Christopher Reeve brought that four-color comic sensibility more than the Hulk TV show. So if I go so far as to say Superman was my first comic book hero, I might be able to say that because although I think I saw and loved the Hulk first, the Hulk show, and the Hulk is still my favorite character, Christopher Reeve's Superman is always going to be the greatest performance of a superhero character in live action. Well, thank you once again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this list if you made it through with me, through the whole list. Remember to put down your favorite, you can do top 20, you can do top 10, you can do top 5, favorite superhero performances in live action below. And once again, hats off to all the characters and all the actors that gave such great performances in those characters. It's just wonderful that we have so many great performances nowadays in live action. And yeah, once again, hats off to Christopher Reeve as Superman, our #1 pick. Again, next time when we do another top list, I don't know if it's going to be top 10 or top 20. I've got another list in mind. Not going to share it yet, but tune in next time. Maybe we'll be doing a Torch News Roundup instead. I don't know what the schedule is going to be. But until next time, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.